and welcome to the Homefront Girl podcast. I'm Gaby Jorgens, and I am the creator of the Homefront Girl brand line of products and designs. I started my studio because I wanted to give a voice through my designs to the families that stand with our men and women in uniform, the silent ranks, as we are sometimes known. I want this podcast to be filled with the stories and voices of what I have come to call the other half of the brave, from the creative world of Hollywood and celebrities who have created and supported the stories of our life, and to you, those on the home front, who also serve. I also want to introduce you to some inspiring women who, if not from the military world, they will inspire you by their stories of going for their dreams, despite the obstacles and the challenges that they found. Something we know about in the mil-spouse world. So, get ready and saddle up, as they say in the Army. This will be fun. Thanks for joining me. And as always, thank you for your service. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me with this interview with the amazing director, Rod Lurie, of the movie Outpost. I would like to apologize. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties at the start. So you'll be joining the interview at the point where Rod and I are discussing Alan Alda, who is a very close friend of his, but also we had been talking about just the integrity and the quality and incredible talent of Alan Alda. And so that is where you're going to come in at. And thank you again for listening, and enjoy the interview.
He's an amazing man. His wife is amazing. He's everything. He's one of the few guys where he's exactly what you think he is.
Wow. I mean, and you know, that comes across through so many of the films. There's such an authenticity to just who he is. It's sort of like, I think of Jimmy Stewart sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's very close, I would say.
So, The Outpost. You know, this film, I tell you, I've seen it 5 times, just so you know.
When you say you've seen it 5 times, you know, a lot of people are saying, does that mean that you start from the beginning and watch it? Or
all the way to the end.
Really? Okay.
Movie that you revisit.
Right.
What I told a lot of military family members that approached me about the film, as far as like, for example, for military families, it's very hard to watch about a war battle, you know, especially with the op-tempo of deployment that we've had in the last decade. It's very hard for families to watch, you know, the battles and stuff like that, you know. But this was not Private Ryan. This was not, although taking nothing away from that brilliant film, this was a film that at its crux was really an emotionally engaging film with these men in a way that you just became so engrossed with, and you really didn't know that much about them. I mean, because Rod, when you start the film, I mean, it's not like you're giving us a whole dive, you know, about, oh my gosh, this is their background and all of this. And there wasn't a lot of that, but somehow through their interaction with each other, we got the feeling that, you know, who they were. And, and then they were, I mean, you did an extraordinary job with that.
Well, we dove very, very deeply into that, Gaby. That was really unbelievably important to us. And that, you know, the book, the Jake Tapper book, covers several years at Combat Outpost Keating, and that we couldn't possibly cover everything. And so we had to limit ourselves to one unit. You know, and so it was a final unit that was at this base, and you know, and we tell the story of Bravo Troop. Now, in the first half of the film, we take incidents that occurred to other units, and in fact have commanders from other units and conflated them so we could fit it all into one film. But as we were trying to figure out, okay, who do we concentrate on? Eventually, we said what we need to settle on are the 2 men who received the Medal of Honor, because their heroism is so cinematic, and but also the 8 men who perished at the battle, the 8 heroes who fought at this in the Battle of Kamdesh, and so that's where we lowered our concentration to. It was absolutely, you know, couldn't have been more important. And in the original drafts of the screenplay, it was very bloated, I would say. I don't mean that in a negative way, just that it was too long for a feature film. And we went into explorations of everybody's home life, and went into very deep dives. And what I felt is that we'll touch on their lives at home, and that'll be enough. All we need to know is that they love their families, they want to get home to their families, they want to get home to a life. But the rest of it was about their interpersonal relationships. And that is how we would feed the emotion of the film.
And that is something I mentioned to Hank. Hank Hughes, and to everyone listening, it is up on the podcast. It was actually the first podcast I did. When I started this in July, I had Jonathan Younger as well as Hank Hughes come on. And, Hank being a veteran, Hank being with the unit, one of the units that had served at Kamdesh, at the Outpost. And, for him, it was very interesting. And one of the first things I said to him was, boy, you guys nailed it. That camaraderie and the speech, which is, all I could call it is soldier speak, and it's something that it's a binding thing, I think, a bonding thing for them. It helps them keep the fear at bay, I think, in so many ways. And I always, in the years as an Army spouse and, also the daughter of a veteran and coming from family that has served many, many years. I always, and then I started Homefront Girl, and, Homefront Girl for me was just an idea about, I wanted an inspirational brand that just gave our military families and also the civilian community, here's a look into our lives. Because you may only see us when we're, the buses are driving up and we're doing a welcome home, or we're receiving someone coming home. And we're more than that, we're the ones that are waiting in the back, at home, we're the ones that, like that scene that you had was so perfect. The one scene where, I don't know who's on the phone. He says, no, honey, I'm not smoking. And he's like, puffing away.
That was perfect.
It was just like, that's what happens. And we do know that, they're not going to tell us everything. They're just going to say, like, we don't tell them everything, because both of us are on a mission to be able to get home safely and get them home safely. And for us to keep our sanity back here with our children and keep the home front safe. So what I wanted to ask you about is, at what point in the filming of doing this film did you feel that this was going to be or did you ever get that feeling like, what we're doing here is going to be big? This is something incredible. Or I'm not using the correct words, but I think you understand where I'm going.
I think I know where you're going. We knew it. I knew it before we even started filming, or I knew what I wanted the responsibility of the film to be, and what our responsibility was. And it became very deep, and it became, extremely involved. When I came onto this film, I insisted on several things. One is that, for example, we would have actors who had been veterans. I wanted that in the film. And I wanted as much authenticity in the film as possible. And so that meant not just that we get the story right, in particular the battle, but also that it is authentic and true in its atmosphere, which is why I had people like Hank Hughes come on. And Hank really helped us rewrite elements of the screenplay to soldier it up. I had been a soldier, as you had said, but it's been decades. And so I really needed help with the modern army. And Hank Hughes and our military advisors were able to help with that a great deal. A guy named Jericho Denman and Ray Mendoza. But it was the Gold Star families that drove us the most, Gaby, by far. This goes very, very, very deep with me, Gaby. And if you'll indulge me, we had to make some changes from real life in this movie for the unit that is being that was fighting in this battle, Bravo troop. we had to do some conflations and with other units in order to make it all fit. And so, but I wouldn't do that without the blessings of the families. And so even the families of the officers, the commanders that we put into the unit, they didn't actually command them in the first half of the movie. I went to their families and got their permission. And then I called every one of the Gold Star families that would speak with me, which is almost everybody, and told them what we were going to do. And they gave us all their blessings. And, some of them were a little bit hesitant at first that, we're going to Hollywoodize this. And that we're all going to make a big profit from it and so on, which, by the way, on a technical level, I want everyone to know that almost everybody involved in this film was working for scale, which is the film equivalent of minimum wage. Right.
Yeah.
What this movie was, nobody got rich on this film at all. We really felt that we were telling a part of American history. And on a personal level, I'm not sure I love the military as much as I love the soldier.
Absolutely.
But and I have no beefs with soldiers. I've got some beefs with way higher ups and with some decisions that are made on behalf of the military. But it was very important for me to talk with the families. And what I learned from them, Gaby, was that, and this is true of veterans too, in movies, they do not necessarily want portrayed as heroism and glorification and canonization. They want something very simple, Gaby, and that's the truth. Mm-hmm. That's it. They want to be able, and I think we gave them this, to show the movie to their wives and to their children and to their parents and their friends and to say, this is what it was.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
They want people to understand, Gaby. I have yet to find a soldier who wants a statue made out to him or her.
Absolutely.
They simply want the truth told. And so I've become very close to many of these families. And by the way, in the beginning, there were a couple of people that were semi-objecting to it, but that's not the case anymore now that they've seen the film. And all I can tell you is that Jake Tapper, who wrote the book, told me these guys are going to be a part of your life for the rest of your life. And he's right. And he didn't mean that in a negative way. It meant that we are really connected, Gaby, in ways that I could never previously have conceived of. And my feeling is that I'm going to make many more movies in my life, in my career, but I will never, ever, 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 ever make a movie as important as this one, ever. And not just to me, but to veterans and to the family of veterans.
Do you feel that feeling that you have, and I totally understand what Jake says, it's a bond, we always say this in the military, the bonds that bind, or foxhole friendships. You're fighting for the guy next to you. You're not fighting for the guy in Washington. You're not fighting for anyone but just survival, and that's the truth. And I always said this, in interviews when people ask me, well, heroes, you use the word heroes. Well, I do, because our families consider them heroes for whatever, they're the ones going out there doing this. But no soldier and no one in my entire existence on this earth that has lived under a military life, have I ever met one soldier that has ever regarded himself as a hero. He will boast that his family are the heroes in all of this.
But they can't possibly view themselves as heroes. Let's look at the Outpost in particular, okay? And we had the full-on cooperation, and he was on set. Ty Carter, one of the recipients of the Medal of Honor. Clint Romesha had his own book and his own project over at Sony, so he could not and would not participate. And I've never spoken to him. But Ty, this guy wears the Medal of Honor, and he feels that he let down the soldiers around him, and that the man that he is credited with saving for whom his actions of saving that guy necessarily earned him the Medal of Honor. That guy, Stefan Mace, who's a wonderful guy, he passed away a few days later. And Ty is always asking himself, if I had gotten there sooner, if he had bled less, he may have lived. And so Ty lives with this feeling that he let the men down. I know that from watching his interviews that Romesha feels that he could have done more to save the lives of some of the 8 men who did die that day. And so, when you're on the field of battle, as long as people are dying around you, you feel a kinship to them. And so, no, I don't know, as you just said, any soldier who feels that he was necessarily a hero. We had in the movie, we had one of the characters, Daniel Rodriguez, is played by himself. Daniel himself came to Bulgaria to play his own character. The first guy who died in the battle was a guy named Kevin Thompson. And Kevin was Rodriguez's best friend and died right in front of him. And so Daniel Rodriguez, on the day of shooting that scene, his job was to show us exactly how Kevin died. He had died right next to him. And so he replicated it for us. And it was a very complicated shot technically for us to get off. And he was very calm and calculating and even cold, Daniel was, and methodical in explaining how he died. And it wasn't until after we were done shooting that Daniel sort of fell apart. He did his job, no matter how difficult, and it was only later that you deal with the consequences of it. But at the moment, a mission must be accomplished. And he just has that mindset. And he was, and he was rather, remarkable to us. And I don't think he views himself as a hero. His best friend died right next to him. People take responsibility for things like that. And so, it's, on the one hand, look, at the end of the film, we do this, those of you who have seen the film know it, we do this sort of montage of all the men who passed. And there's a song on top of it, a song that I wrote.
And, by the way, I want to mention that. I had no idea you wrote that. That song has moved me to tears. Rita Hanks did a fabulous job.
Rita Wilson.
Rita Wilson. Oh, she's married to Tom Hanks. Sorry.
Maybe that's her legal name. I don't know. But
I don't know.
Anyway, so the movie at once is quite tragic. But there's a difference between something being tragic and something being depressing. And the tragedy here is, what wasn't fulfilled in the lives of those men because they were taken down. But there's also something inspiring in what human beings are willing to do for one another, because each of those guys died trying to save somebody else.
Exactly.
And there's a certain beauty there, Gaby.
Absolutely. And I don't think you could have said it better. And, I think that's the reason I think that film has just impacted so many, not only the people that have lived this life and know this life, have seen, have been at the funerals, have seen, all those aspects of military life, because it's I say this often to companies. I said, you have to understand, this isn't just a profession. This is a lifestyle that the families have to, you just become a part of a unit. Your family grew exponentially, because you married into the life. You literally do. And in the same way, it happens to our men and women who join. They're fighting for the guy next to them. And I think what you did with this film is that we have had in recent years so many films that talked about the most elite of our warriors, and we're grateful for their skill and all that they've done. But this was the first film, and I can't really think in cinematic, recent cinematic film history, a film that really touched on just the regular guy.
Yeah, that was a very important part of this film, and something that was very attractive about telling the story is that none of these guys necessarily signed on for life. I mean, Romesha and Carter had been in for a while, and some of those guys have, but I don't think any of them had aspirations to be in for another decade or two. And when you look at, there are some films that are like American Sniper. Many people think it's kind of a masterpiece, and I do think it's an absolutely brilliant movie. And Clint did a great job with that film. But it's about, a sniper. It's about the Navy SEALs, and Lone Survivor is also about the SEALs, and that movie.
Valor. Oh God, what was that one?
Act of Valor, or
Act
about
of Valor.
Special Forces. So
Special Forces.
One of the movies that was an antecedent for us and that really inspired us was Platoon, which is also about just regular grunts.
And that's true. Yeah.
And what they go through. And so this was really important, and you could tell from the conversations that these guys have, because when they do talk about home, they're talking about what they want to do with their lives, how they want to get married. You have the one guy, Gallegos, who's Amanda was his wife. He had divorced her, right? But now now he talks about getting back together, even though she's pregnant by some
other guy, yeah.
Some random guy, and the love that he has for her. And he says, love is love. And you realize that these guys can love as well as anybody. And that, although their lives are more wrapped around one another than they are wrapped around, the military and the mission and so on. So, I find this to be, I think what you're saying is absolutely correct.
Let me ask you something, because what you just said was very touching. When I got married at West Point at the Cadet Chapel, and I think you know the place.
That was my first wedding also.
That was your first wedding also. Yeah, darn it, that Cadet Chapel. But things that some senior wives told me early on is that the military is the mistress, and there was a lot of truth to that. The mission comes first. The mission does come first. I mean, they love you, they care for you, but they took an oath, and that oath is something that you being a West Pointer, my association with West Point for all those years, I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of my miniature. I'm very proud of the time that I spent and the love that I have for that incredible.
Well, in fact, Gaby, your son's, this just struck me just this very second. Your son's name is Thayer, is it not?
It absolutely is.
So he's named after Sylvanus Thayer?
Yeah, you want to know the curious thing about that one? No, it was, okay, first of all, Thayer means born from the nation's army. And also the fact that I'm a geek when it comes to military history. One of the interviews that I recently did, a very dear, dear friend of mine, is Helen Patton, who's the granddaughter of General George Patton. I wanted to really tell you and congratulate you on, because, and I mentioned this to Hank when we were talking on the previous interview, I was very, very happy to know as I watched this film and I sensed it, it was very apolitical.
Yes. It's extremely apolitical. And when we tested the film, that was one of the things that we gauged. And it's the first time I've ever seen in film testing an answer that went 100%, which is 100% of the people said it was apolitical. They didn't know what side the filmmakers were on. And the irony of this is that my films have been extremely politically partisan up until now. Every one of my films has taken a very progressive liberal position and feminist position. And this was, I didn't want to lose anybody watching this film. Not to get into the depths of this, but just to, into the weeds of this, but just to stress my point, is that Joe Biden won the military vote. So it just goes to show you that you cannot, when you're making a movie for the military, it doesn't necessarily behoove you to take a political position of any kind. the military is diverse. There are people that come from, Massachusetts, and the people that come from North Dakota, and there are people that are African American and people that are Southern white, and they come from all the demographics, get mushed up in the military. So it is an extremely nonpartisan film.
Yeah. And it comes through, and I think that you're absolutely right. You didn't lose anyone because of that. I think when you earlier you had said that you love our soldiers.
Yeah, I do.
Love our military, and I feel exactly the same way. I probably the most incredible memories that I have are those when I was active, and I was there with soldiers and their families, and there's nothing like it. It's hard to really explain what it's like to be around them, and to so young too.
Yep.
And so you take so much away from it, but also too, it's the fact that you feel so incredibly the bond that these soldiers really, it's not like they all are best friends and everybody gets along. No, because, as you just explained it, our military and all volunteer force that we have is made up of every microcosm that we have in our country. And they come from every walk of life, they come together, and it is a credit to our leaders and to the gunny sergeant, to any of them who are able to build teams who can go out and do these missions.
In the Outpost, the character of Ty Carter is an asshole. Nobody likes him. And when Ty read the script, he said, "I'm a real asshole of the script." And I said, "Well, I'm not asking if you were an asshole. How were you perceived?" And he goes, "Oh, as an asshole. I mean, nobody liked me. He had no friends. He had he'll say he had a couple of friends. But he concedes that he didn't get along with anybody, and that these guys, they hated him. I mean, he was really persona non grata, and for many reasons. And a very grating personality. He had been in the Marines and lorded that over people. And in his book called Red Platoon, Clint Romesha completely eviscerates Carter, hates him. But on that day, during that battle, he was there for the men. He was there for them.
He sure was. I will honestly say I did not know who Caleb Landry Jones was prior to this film, and I am one of his biggest fans, and I certainly hope that he will be remembered in February.
Well, in Oscar time, I'm hoping too, and we're trying. It's difficult for very small films like ours to get attention, and the reason why it's difficult is that although Screen Media, who's distributing the company, is being very generous in trying to quote unquote campaign for the film, we're getting all these big gifts now from Netflix, with all sorts of attention being paid to their movies, and they're really pushing it. And that sort of budget we just don't have. But Caleb gives, in my opinion, one of the single greatest, if not the greatest, combat performance of all time. I don't mean a war film. I mean a combat performance. What he does in the combat sequences is an acting tour de force like you've never seen.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But and I'm sorry if you can hear all the dogs.
That's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Let me tell you a fast story. So Caleb Landry Jones came to my attention because my producing partner Mark Friedman had worked with him in a movie called Stonewall, in which he played a sort of a drag queen. And he was in that movie Get Out as the brother, and he was in 3 Billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri. He plays the guy that's thrown out the window. And he's nothing like Ty Carter. And then I met him at Mel's Drive-In. And because this podcast is just us here speaking.
Nobody listening but us. Yeah, nobody but us.
Here it is. I trust the people that are listening. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm sitting in the restaurant, and in walks Caleb. And Caleb is skinny like olive oil from the Popeye cartoons.
Oh yeah.
And he has hair down to his ass, and he's stoned out of his mind. And he's a massive pothead, this kid. and unapologetically so. That's why he's like Woody Harrelson, right? And and he looks like absolutely nothing like Ty Carter, and he acts nothing like Ty Carter, and he's speaking a mile a minute, and then I send, but I think he's a great actor, so okay, maybe it'll work. And so I send him to meet Ty Carter, and Ty Carter calls me and says, "Is this guy going to go to the gym? I mean, for God's sakes, man." But here's what happened. Here's what happened. Caleb's older brother was a Marine who lost both his legs in Iraq. And he read the script and he told Caleb, okay, you're going to make this movie, Caleb, and you're not going to fuck it up. And I won't let you fuck it up. And wow. Caleb was, sir, yes, sir. Yeah. And the brother comes with his prosthetic legs to Bulgaria, where we shot the film, and he helped to guide Caleb through the role. And the end result is that Caleb did become Ty Carter, and he was squared away on the set. And I've never, ever worked with an actor more invested in a part than Caleb was. He was going to honor these men. He was going to honor his brother.
He's going to honor his brother, yeah.
And really, we had so many of these soldiers on set that nobody was going to short shrift the film or the characters that they were playing. Nobody, because all the men made contact with the Gold Star families. They became part of their families, and I'll never work on a movie again where so many people are so invested in the film.
And that's what made it such an extraordinary film to watch. Something, right. Because you can feel it, it's palpable that and just to piggyback on what you said about Caleb, I will tell you, I'm trying very hard to remember, who was your director of photography?
His name is Lorenzo Senatore.
Absolutely brilliant. I mean,
beyond brilliant.
Beyond brilliant. I mean, I think the one that sticks in my mind is, Caleb's eyes are extraordinary.
Yes.
But that helicopter, and he hears that Mace didn't make it.
No.
That close up or that one shot, and you just feel and you can see everything they've gone through. And as they're leaving that, right. Custer's hole, basically, right. Which was that outpost. And, it just wrapped everything up into exactly what these men had just gone through. And and I know that I've heard you speak about oneers. What is a oneer when it comes to film?
A oneer. So when you see a scene normally, you'll see somebody's face, then you do a cut and you see somebody else's face, and then you see a wide shot, and it's a way of editing down a film. That you can shorten a scene that way, you can reach for maximum impact. But what I did in this film is most of the scenes are oneers, meaning that the camera sort of moves around to move between characters. We never have any cuts in the scenes, including in the battle sequence, where it is particularly difficult to do. And Lorenzo had this genius. He and his operator, Sasha Proctor, had this genius in being able to accomplish this. It took a lot of rehearsal and a lot of preparation and a lot of us, sort of game planning how we're going to do this. I had seen a movie called Dunkirk, and by Chris Nolan, and it was so masterfully done and creatively done that I said, okay, I need to find some sort of creative counterpart to do myself. You just can't this is not an action film. Millennium is very good at making these mid-budget level action films that do extremely well, like The Expendables or the Rambo films. But this was going to be a war film. This is a different animal. And so I just needed to find a creative way of doing it. Plus, if you go into the oneers in the battle sequence, that means you're following a character and can relive viscerally what that character is feeling. We never leave Ty Carter when he's running across the base or carrying Mace on a stretcher at the end of the movie. And in so doing, you can sort of be at one with his exhaustion.
it's sort of like I don't know how easy it is for the actors for playing these parts. But I would think it would make it extraordinarily um, helpful as they're in character. There's nobody
Yes.
cutting saying
Yes.
cut,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. No.
Then you got to go back into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
get back
No.
into that emotion.
Even when you're doing the close-ups on characters, right? They're having a conversation with somebody. And generally speaking, if you're doing a close-up, it means the camera's close to your face, and that means that the other actor is often behind the camera. And so it's a very technical form of acting. And so there's something much more organic doing it as oneers. And by the way, the other thing is that if you do it correctly, if you really are well prepared, then your day can be over very quickly if you nail it in 2 or 3 takes.
Have you done this before in other films?
I've done oneers, but not for the entire, not for every scene. And the look in the battle sequences, you really, really, really have to get it right, because I've got stuntmen, I got pyrotechnics going off, and so if any one of those things goes wrong, you got to start all over again, because you don't have the option of cutting to something else and to cover it up. So we really had to get all of that, almost perfect. But we did. And one of the things that I did, this is maybe a little too inside baseball, when you're having a camera, the cameras are very heavy, right? So when you're having an operator run with the camera with the soldiers for like several minutes, that can be absolutely exhausting, especially since they're carrying this 70 pounds with them. And so I had to find a way to make it less exhausting for the camera operator. So Lorenzo remembered that on a film called Das Boot years ago, they came up with a technique where they disassembled the camera, they put it into a backpack, and the operator would put it on the backpack, and the only thing that he had in front of him is a lens, which is connected by a cable. So it made it easier for him to do. So I could have him do those scenes 2 or 3 times in a row without, completely exhausting his body.
What an exciting thing! Das Boot comes through on your film. I mean, that's a seminal film as well.
It's a great film. Yeah,
absolutely.
I know. Are you a cineast? It sounds like you know your movies really well.
I do. And so whatever that word is that you just said, Rod, I'm that.
Cineast, an expert on film.
I love filmmaking. I love the entire process. But one thing that, go ahead.
No, I was going to change the subject, so you go ahead. Go, please.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and this is touching on your military background, the military builds teams. When you went to Bulgaria and you assembled and you had everyone there that you're going to make this film, did you approach it with that, you're my team? And
oh yeah, well, but there's something more, which is I had a lot of military guys around me, including a lot of the actors. And so what is it that they teach you at West Point? Mm-hmm. Probably, anybody who knows a West Pointer, who is related to a West Pointer, or is or was married to a West Pointer, can tell you that they are problem solvers, that they basically don't panic, and that on a movie set, there are so many problems that have to be solved that it's great if you've got military people who have a history of not panicking, who understand that there's a way to solve every problem. And so, and you've got people that are leaders on set, and people know how to inspire. And so when you assemble the team there, they feel that they're in good and competent hands. And that was, but I want to say something about this crew and about the Gold Star families and how we all came together. And I don't mean to buzzkill here, but indulge me for just a second, Gaby.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
Not absolutely.
So I'm in preparation on this film, and I'm in Bulgaria, and I get a phone call from my mother telling me that my son Hunter is in a hospital in Michigan. He was there for a music festival. She doesn't know why he's in the hospital. And I call the hospital, and they tell me that Hunter is on he's on life-saving apparatuses, and that
Oh
he had had a
my.
cardiac arrest and that he's not going to make it.
Oh my God.
And I call my wife, I call my sister, I call my daughter, Paige, I call my ex-wife, and I say, everyone needs to get to Michigan, and you need to sit next to his bed. He's unconscious, but I need you to talk to him, keep him alive until I get there. Because I don't know what's going to happen if my son dies and I'm not there.
Yeah.
And so with the good help of Millennium, they got me to Michigan. It was very complicated, but I got there, and I didn't even recognize him.
Oh my.
It was really awful. And where he's on these life-saving machines, and he had a blood clot, just came out of nowhere and nailed him.
No precondition, no, nothing.
Well, we learned later that he had mutations, which is common among Jewish folks, that lent itself to these blood clots. But he had been on a plane, the works. But he was lying there, and I had to make the decision with my ex-wife to pull the plug, which is the common phrase.
Yeah.
And the nurses there, they tortured us by saying he had like overdosed, which is not Hunter at all. It didn't make any sense. And they just made an assumption because he's at a music festival, right? But it turned out it was a blood clot, but that's a whole other story. But it was the most horrible, it was the easiest and most difficult decision of my life at the same time.
I can't imagine. And God forbid, to lose a son. How old was he, Rod?
Well, this is what I'm getting to. So my daughter says to me, they tell me he's got 20 minutes left of life.
Even on the Lexapro.
Yeah. And I'm watching his chest move up and down. It's the only sign of life. Oh. And my daughter says to me, Dad, I know that the last thing you're thinking about is your movie right now, but you have to get back to Bulgaria and finish your movie. And believe me, Millennium, you can ask your son, because I think he worked for Millennium at the time. They were making lists already of who's going to replace me.
Wow.
And, I don't know how well that would have gone. I think they would have found that wasn't going to work. It's too big a movie to do that with, but, the putting it together is too big a deal. It's a very small, low budget film, actually. But she said Hunter, who loved movies and who loved this movie, because the last time that I saw him was with the American cast. We all gathered at my house.
Oh.
She said it would destroy him if he realized because of him the whole film fell apart. So I called up the guy you had on your show, Jonathan Younger.
Uh-huh.
And I said, his name, they call him Yoni. I said, Yoni, I'm coming back. I'm going to make this film. I'm going to make it my way because I'm going to dedicate it now to Hunter. And everyone needs to get out of my way. And he said, just come back, and come back and God bless. And, and they were great. But sure enough, after 20 minutes, my son's chest moved for the last time. He died. And as I kissed his forehead, I realized that he was the same age as these men who died at the Battle of Kamdesh, more or less.
Wow.
And Gaby, I cannot begin to tell you how dramatically the Gold Star families rallied around me.
Yeah. Because they'd experienced it.
They've experienced it. They knew what I was going through. And I realized also that the movie, that when I depicted the deaths of these men, I would have to keep Hunter in mind. Because if I saw Hunter, if someone was going to film Hunter's death, I would not want it done with music. I would not want it over glamorized. I would just want the truth told. And in the end, as I said before, what the families and what the veterans themselves want told is the truth. And I understood that now more than ever. And I got to Bulgaria and I put Hunter's photo up on the monitor. Anytime somebody came around to bitch or complain, they looked at his photo and they walked away. And that kid guided the movie. And also that song that I wrote after he died. I wrote it on the plane.
That was an extraordinary song. And I will tell you that both Jonathan, Yoni, and Hank, when I had them on, I distinctly remember Yoni saying during the interview, after Hunter's death, there was nothing could, that was it, we were going to get this film done. I think Scott Eastwood broke an ankle or something. I was like, you're going to get out there, you're going to do the film. I don't care if it hurts, you're going out there. And it was going to get done. And,
and everybody was extraordinary. And Scott did break his ankle and he did champion through the film. And that guy's a fucking man. There have been other actors, even on Millennium films, who broke their ankles and they totally wussed out and needed half a year. And it was like, but with Scott, I rearranged the schedule to make it somewhat more friendly to the injury. But I had to convince the insurance company that we could finish the film. But he gutted it out. Everybody gutted this film out, and so. And
didn't that grow after you having to go through this horrific loss of Hunter? I think, they, and again, that takes it back to you guys were a unit, you literally were a unit of bonded together by not only this film and the men who died in the story. Now you're bonded with the loss of Hunter, and, dedicating this film to your son is extraordinary, and he will forever be associated with this film.
That is true. I want to be careful, and I appreciate your saying that, Gaby, but I want to go on record saying that that obviously there is nothing more dramatic than the bond formed on the fields of combat, and we're not in the fields of combat, but it's as close as you can come on a movie set. And maybe the best way to end this conversation is to tell you this. We showed the film to the Gold Star families in October of 2019. Millennium was good enough to fly them all in to Washington, D.C., to the Navy Memorial, of all places, where the film was shown to them by the Brookings Institute, which is a political think tank, is run by a former general. We showed the film to the Gold Star families, and Jake Tapper, by the way, there's no journalist that is more pro-military and pro-vet than Jake Tapper, period. Nobody comes close. I don't want to hear about it. Nobody. And the book itself is evidence of that. And he gave his advance to military charities for the film. For him.
What a beautiful thing to hear.
Yeah, and so have a lot of us. But Jake Tapper did that. And Jake Tapper, who's about as tough a son of a bitch as it comes to when he's interviewing people, he gives no quarter to the most powerful people on earth on his show, completely unfazed, was a nervous wreck during the screening. And so was I, because what if the families objected to the film? What if they said, which would be a little far-fetched, my boy didn't curse? What if they said, that's not how it happened, that's not how he was, that's not this, how dare you? What if we went through that? It would have been brutal.
Yeah.
For Gaby, it was the opposite of that. It was the most affirming moment of my career, and I think it was for Jake too, that every single person was both triggered and moved at the same time. And the reason is this, and this applies to my son. There is a saying, I think it's a Native American saying, that we die twice, Gaby. One is when we leave this earth, and the second time is the last time anybody ever speaks our name. And I think that one of the great fears of all these families were that these men died too young to for anybody ever to speak the names of their loved ones ever again. That they will disappear into the ether. They'll have as much impact on the world as some cat in Upper Mongolia. But that's
and also that they'll just become another number within the
well, that's it. That's exactly right. But do you know what we did, Gaby? Everyone's going to speak the name of
their name. Yeah.
Gallegos,
Gallegos. Yeah,
Hart,
absolutely.
Kirk, Griffin, you know, all those guys, Mace, Faulkner, everybody, all these wonderful men who gave their lives for one another, even more than their country.
Yeah, they really did, and I think that's the importance of this film. And I said this to the guys when I first interviewed them. And of course Hank did day one, his thesis film at AFI, and of course it got an Oscar nomination for it. I mean, he's a brilliant guy.
He is brilliant, yeah, and a wonderful
human being. Yeah, I definitely got that from meeting him. Just even on the podcast or talking beforehand. And he did share with me what you did in Bulgaria and how you were able to create the Outpost. He shared how he went into his bunk, and that would have been his bunk when he was assigned there with the 173rd.
Yeah.
And he just broke down in tears. It was that close.
It was very moving. It was very moving to see how the mere set, affected the Stony Portis, who was the commander of 361 Cav, right? Or Bravo troop, I should say. It was very moving to see how moved he was. Chris Cordova, who was the medical doctor, came on the set the very day that we were shooting his character saving the life of Stefan Mace, and how we replicated his operating room. I mean, it's to see these guys react. Look, I don't know what I've got a couple movies lined up. I don't know that I'll ever do anything that will affect me so deeply and so much. And I'm just happy that we have affected, other people. And the film got millions of viewers. We're the #1 movie this summer. And the reviews, I think we're the highest rated war film of the century on Rotten Tomatoes.
I think you are. I think you are. And, and that's why it's been important for me to really, and I've been very grateful to be able to have you on, have, Hank on and Yoni and give as much as I possibly can as far as attention to those who may not know what this film is about or might be fearful. Because I understand that, I understand people who have families who are deployed, who are in situations like this. And that's something our country also doesn't realize many times is we're constantly up tempo. You may not hear about us or you may not know about them, but we're deployed. Okay. And it may be small units, but there's families who have to live through that. So in seeing this film, and it's in so many ways a poetic and solemn but emotionally gripping film that you have paid tribute in such a way that even those who may not be the families of the 8 will walk away feeling an intense pride in what their loved ones do.
The point I was trying to make when I was talking about the critical and sort of eyeball success of the film, because there's no box office to speak of, it's all VOD and Netflix. I wasn't trying to brag. The point I was trying to get to was all that is great, but it's not as great as the thousands of tweets we got from veterans.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have not heard one negative. The only time I hear anything negative about our film is from people who haven't seen it, who are making an assumption about it, which they really should not make. I'll listen to anything about this film as long as you've seen it.
Exactly.
And by the way, so your people who have seen it, if you want to go on Rotten Tomatoes and give us a really high score, like a 5 star, so that we want to encourage people to see the film And if they know
absolutely.
if they know that veteran or veteran families are into it, then it really helps. And
do you know of any screenings on bases around the country?
We
well, I
no,
guess not. I guess they can't do that now. Gosh.
We arranged with tremendous amount of protocol. We arranged multiple screenings at Fort Carson, where this unit is based. Mm-hmm. So, but that was it. One of the film was going to open at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and that got canceled because of COVID. But the thing that really bummed me out is we're going to do a world premiere. We're trying to set it up at West Point itself.
Oh, that's awesome. Good luck with that.
Well, it didn't happen, so it's...
Oh, it didn't happen? Oh,
yeah, I really... God, I was such a terrible cadet that I always had these dreams that one day I would stand on that stage speaking to the cadets in some shape or form. And my dream was going to come true, and it went poof.
Hey, don't give up on that dream too quickly. You don't ever know,
Well, no, I think that my hope is that eventually, we do screen it at Ike Hall, and they should see. They should,
and I think it would be an extraordinary thing, and I know that speaking as someone who is very close to West Point, I am going to congratulate you for making the Corps of Cadets very, very honored by what you have done in telling the story of the American soldiers.
Thank you.
Rod, thank you for being with me today. And, kickoff isn't happening yet, but they're going crazy over at Mikey. So turn on TV. I'll be doing it. And
all right. Very good. Okay. All right, Gaby. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Rod. And best of luck to you. And it was an absolute honor and pleasure. And look forward to hopefully seeing all the great things you're coming up with.
I hope so. Thank you.
We will. Okay, take care.